If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. For this Sunday evening's address, the last before I take a brief hiatus, there are a number of news articles and items that I could have focused on, but I think it's time to focus on something that I have neglected for far too long, and that is to give gratitude, thanks, and recognize the value and contribution of the family, something that admittedly I don't do anywhere near as often as I should. I call myself Professor Truth, but you see, truth and courage are flip sides of the same coin. You can't have truth unless you also have the courage to face up to that truth. And you're not truly courageous unless you're fighting for what's true. It takes courage to keep the truth from being snuffed out. Situational ethics, doing whatever is to one's advantage at any particular moment. Any coward can fight for that because it doesn't require them to commit to anything. But to dig in your heels and make a promise to yourself that you will take this position no matter what happens, even when it costs you, especially when it seems that everyone and everything is against you, that takes courage. 15 years ago, practically no one was talking like this. Pseudo-spiritual mumbo-jumbo, Christian and otherwise, as well as pointless squabbling masquerading as historical debate, that was pretty much what comprised the entirety of the black discourse. The talk that I and a very tiny handful of people were doing wasn't popular at all. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. It was ridiculed. The enemy had had the better part of 50 years to dumb down the discourse within the black community, and they'd been largely successful. That's why when I began doing this online, I said that the mission of the black media was to take control of the discourse within the black community and to elevate the debate. Take control of the discourse means that we determine, control, and curate what the focus of our collective conversation will be. And no, we cannot and will not let every Tom, Dick, and Harry, Jane, Sue, and Mary with a pulse and an opinion throw in their 2 cents. We made that mistake for the longest time, and that's a large part of what undermined and ultimately destroyed the intellectual and philosophical momentum that we had coming out of the 1960s. We allowed a social environment in our community where the class clown was given the same opportunity to be heard as the valedictorian. And what that did was to reduce the wisest among us to the same level as the village idiot. Who was right and who was wrong became utterly meaningless. We cannot and will not assign the same value to everyone's opinion because most opinions simply are not worth hearing. Thank you very much, TBA. Secondly, to elevate the debate. That means that both the subject matter we choose to discuss and the level of in-depth analysis that we bring to it must not merely be high, it must be superior. Our people deserve no less. The bad guys have massive resources and personnel that they can throw towards making sure they know what's going on and to give themselves as accurate a read on the events as they can. Our people should have the exact same thing. The amazing thing about raising the bar for discourse is that if you do it right, then a lot of people are going to up their game so that they can be part of the discussion. The enemy knows that you're not dumb. That's why they had to invade, take over, and derange our internal politics and our media, precisely because they know that we are an intelligent people. I'm not afraid of keeping the conversation at a high level. That's where it's supposed to be. We make it our business to tell you not only the subjects that the enemy doesn't want you to be focusing on, but we also tell you what the enemy will do before they do it. And as it turned out, highbrow was a flavor of discourse that black people liked. A number of the weed-smoking, panty-chasing half-wits tried to transition from their spiritual mumbo-jumbo chatter to try to do this kind of real black empowerment talk, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't keep up. We raised the bar so high, they couldn't get over it. And sure, the white media tried to reverse engineer their own pathetic counterfeits like A-dunts. And it seems that every 6 months, the white media is declaring yet another group of their hand-picked flunkies as being the new civil rights leaders, or the new voices of the black community. But these sock puppets for white power don't fool anyone, largely because the people that they're trying to fool, you, aren't even listening to them. You're listening to us. See, the part that doesn't get talked about anywhere nearly enough as it should is you. Black media is not myself, or TBA, or Brother Tariq, or Tari and Rain, or Your World, or any of the other new voices of black media. We are the mouthpiece, but the message didn't come from us. And the reason that it's been so effective isn't because of us. It's because of you. What we do represents your effort as much as it does ours. The relationship between us and you is reciprocal. We wouldn't exist if you didn't want us to. We're here because you want us to be. And don't ever underestimate the value of your involvement or support. The enemy certainly doesn't underestimate you. As much as I despise the white supremacist, I wish I could get my people to see themselves through the enemy's eyes. Why are we so hated? This is a question that I see in the comment sections regularly. We have given the world so much, and we've harmed no one, and yet we are harassed, hunted, and hated, punished, and persecuted the world over. And for what? Wherever we go, simply because of the fact that we exist, we automatically become the targets of rage and violence. Why? Fear and anger are two sides of the same coin. When someone is mad about something, what you should automatically ask is, what is this person afraid of? Because most manifestations of anger are motivated by fear. This is why the enemy is always fighting to undermine us, taking down YouTube channels, striking Twitter feeds, these efforts to disrupt and derail our operations. See, when these other groups fight for something, all that gets changed is a couple of laws. When black people fight for our rights, that changes the world. Everyone knows this. What needs to be said is that a lot of people have been able to find a comfortable place for themselves under white supremacy. But the dirty, ugliest secret of all is that a lot of the people who are so comfortable under white supremacy aren't even classified as white. White supremacy has done a very able job of co-opting and getting the support of people who it doesn't even classify as white. Black media is unique because of the change that we represent. What we say is unique. These other groups, they have not been able to duplicate what we've done because, in the case of a lot of them, they see themselves not as people of color, quote unquote. They don't see themselves as brown, yellow, red, etc. They see themselves as members of the dominant society. As an example, the billionaire Shahid Khan is of Pakistani descent. He's Asian. But did he put his billions of dollars into starting an Asian American news channel? No. Instead, he chose to put his money into starting a so-called black news channel. And he didn't do that to do us any favors. Well, that went about as well as you would expect. They were dead within a year. And there's other people of color who are billionaires who have not tried to start some media operation geared toward their people of color ethnic group. And why is that? It is because of the very American tradition of hypocrisy. A lot more people than are willing to admit it happen to identify with the dominant society. You have the white supremacists, and then you have the white supremacist adjacents. And somebody's got to call them out. And that's where the black media comes in. And when I say black media, I mean you. Now, looking at the comments, a lot of you guys often say that the new voices of black media are an institution to the community. But what is an institution? I'm not simply asking that simply to be esoteric. I'm saying it because you need to keep that in mind when you use these words. Institutions are the guardians of ideas and ideals. But ultimately, any institution is a collection of people who have organized themselves to protect and promote some idea or ideal that is important to them. An institution is a real-world manifestation of a group of people's desire to perpetuate something. And since it exists in the real world, institutions require resources to create them, to perpetuate them, to maintain them, and to make them grow. It is the duty of the institution to create and magnify their own prestige. That's how you get a Harvard or a Yale. But although the word prestige means illusion, that's not to say that every institution's value is an illusion. The most important institutions are the ones you never even hear about very much, and the most powerful people created or otherwise depend on those institutions precisely because they provide real value. We are at the point of reestablishing these principles within our community. This is not going to be a perfect process. We have to stop beating ourselves up when we get things wrong, or make a mistake, or when we suffer a setback. That's part of the process, people. Most oppressed people who fight for their liberation lose most of their fights. It goes very rough for them, especially in the early days. But there's a world of difference between losing a few fights and losing the war. Wars of liberation are usually marked by terrible defeats in the beginning for the freedom fighters, but also it's marked by a few spectacular victories at the end. This is because when you have the oppressed fighting for their liberation, they're fighting against the establishment, against the established power, an opponent with superior resources. They've got the advantage, and they will try to crush the oppressed using that advantage. Now, since the oppressed don't have the enemy's resources, they have to counter the enemy with the one thing that they do have a superior amount of: will. The enemy will not be crushed in a single day is what I'm trying to tell you. But he will be broken down, one defeat at a time. And then as he realizes his resources simply cannot overcome our will, he's going to begin to question just how much he's willing to lose in this fight. As it becomes clear that we want it far more than he does, he'll begin to withdraw his resources. But first, we've got to break his will. This is why the end of a liberation struggle, there's a string of victories. The enemy's will to fight has been broken, and when that occurs, his superior resources become worthless. Now, we're a long way from that point. We got to be honest about that fact. But we will get there if we make up our minds that we will be persistent and relentless. We do not look for excuses to quit the field of battle. When we suffer some sort of setback or even a defeat, we're going to do an after-action report and find out what went wrong or who went wrong, and then we're going to correct it. You make up your mind that you will be persistent and relentless. I am proud of the work that we have done to forward our people's interest, to get us talking a new vocabulary, one that promotes, as Dr. John Henrik Clarke beautifully put it, the essential selfishness of survival. And I do mean we. You're the reason I'm here, why I've been here so long. I speak the words you want me to. Yes, I am an advocate for my people, and because of that, I constantly remind myself that I have a duty to represent your interests with as much intelligence, persistence, and ferocity as I can. But make no mistake, I didn't do you any favors by getting out here. There's a lot of people who talk, and most of them are ignored. You're the ones who did me the favor by listening and agreeing that I represented your interest adequately. For 15 years you've done so, no matter how many dirty tricks and roadblocks the enemy has thrown at us, and they have. I like to think to myself that I at least have the ability to express myself completely in words, but the truth of the matter is, when it comes to telling you how much your support and encouragement has meant over all these years, I really don't have the words. When it comes to the enemy's lies, I know exactly how to respond to that. That's easy. But when it comes to my people's support, especially when I look back at how long you've been out here with me on this particular battlefield, to tell you how much that means to me, I don't really know how to say that. But I do know that I can't think of any greater compliment that you could bestow on me than that. Now, as I've been saying for a while now, after tonight I'm going to be taking a few weeks off from posting videos. I'll occasionally make a few posts on Twitter to be sure. It's possible that there might be a YouTube video posted, but only if something particularly shocking, salient, or that I feel I simply have to speak on comes up. I suppose we'll see. But I just want for people not to panic or freak out when tomorrow morning comes and there's no moment of truth. Though on a side note, I do admit I got some morbid curiosity about the folks who will no doubt be bombing my comments section asking, "Where's Professor Truth at? Why isn't he posting? I hope he's all right. Did he get his account locked again?" Because we all know they're coming. But all kidding aside, I am truly blessed to have an audience comprised of some of the most perceptive, most discerning, and most relentless and conscientious people in the world. A lot of black people believed that there was a number of black folks who were ready for this kind of message, who didn't want the morning comedian clown show of the Tom Joyners and Steve Harveys and others. They wanted to believe that there were black people who were receptive to this kind of message, delivered this way. Well, I'm very fortunate. Because of your daily involvement, encouragement, and support, I never had to believe that you guys were here. I always knew it. And for that, I cannot thank you enough, except to do what I can to deliver your message to the best of my abilities and to remain true to that message. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Mouse, Morris Bodden, Herman Breckenridge, Michael Harris, and Big Stomp. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment, and that includes black media, only exists because of you.